Good morning and welcome to Government with Uplift Education and Miss Williams. Today we will be looking at elections and political parties. Recently something happened that was really major. It was a special Tuesday. Does anyone know what that is? It was Tuesday, March the 3rd, Super Tuesday, and we are preparing to elect our next president of the United States of America, which makes this the perfect time to cover elections, election processes, be it at the presidential or primary election or your local elections. So if you will go ahead and pull up your PowerPoint presentation, we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're looking at is voting. So none of us are old enough to vote. Well, I'm old enough to vote. Well, hey. Voting is a right and responsibility of your citizenship in the United States. It is looked at something that you do as a citizen, and it is an obligation to you. And so when we talk about citizenship and we're talking about the ability to vote, can anyone vote? Not quite. So in order to vote in the United States of America, you must be 18 years old, a citizen, a state resident. You must be mentally competent, and previously you could not be a convicted felon. However, we're seeing in other states that they are overturning those rules so that even convicted felons can vote in their respective states if they have overturned that ruling or that law in their state. Voting participation. That is the biggest thing. You must come out. Your voice matters. Vote. Vote or die. They told us that years ago. Vote, 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 vote. We are looking for increased turnouts in presidential elections. We're noticing more celebrities are getting out and putting the message out. It's not just okay for you to go with the flow, because the flow may not be your flow. Vote for what you believe in. Vote for what you think. So when we're talking about participation, we're more likely talking about the education of the individuals that are voting. We're looking at their age, and we're looking at the incomes of the people that are voting. Are we discriminating? No, but we want to make sure that everyone is accounted for whenever we are looking at voter participation. So what is it, or what happens to all of those non-voters out there? Well, we typically find that people tend to fall into the non-voter category when they have either a lack of interest, meaning that they're not really interested in politics, or they don't really care about what's going on, or they forgot to register. There are deadlines for everything. You think that we just give you deadlines in school? That is a negative. Everywhere you go, there will be deadlines, and unfortunately, but fortunately, there's a deadline to register to vote. Also, it may be because they're just not informed on the issues that are on the platform. If I have no idea what's going on in school, I don't have kids, I may not know what's going on with education. However, I may have an interest in global warming, but it hasn't been addressed. So it may not be that they have just a lack of interest. Maybe they're not informed on the issues that are currently on the platform. They're less likely to participate because of their income, age, and education. Usually they're the working class. They're the people that are going to work every single day. And maybe that's not the first priority on their mind. Possibly. There are a lot of different scenarios that could fall into that. So what's the main idea? The main idea is that qualified citizens have a responsibility of staying informed about campaign issues and exercise their right to vote. That is how we maintain the government that we have today. So when we talk about the government that we have today, and we talk about our social responsibilities, we have to address that there are political parties, right? One person can't run against the other if there isn't an opposition. So political parties. Political parties are organizations made up of people who share similar ideas about the way the country should be governed. So they have specific functions and specific purposes. The specific functions and specific purposes of political parties are to, number one, recruit and nominate candidates for public office. In the primaries, they elect candidates, and in conventions, they name the candidates. At the primaries, they elect the candidates. At conventions, they simply name the candidate. So, how do they help these candidates win? right? Because nothing is free. Money, 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 money. They must raise money for campaigns. They must campaign for their candidates. And the most important function, since the candidate will support the party goals if they're elected, is that they are campaigning very hard for these candidates. No one can vote for you if no one knows who you are. It's just like advertisement. So, they also must set party goals. Number one, they must have a platform. They have to have a statement of the party's position on major issues. So they can't just go out there and say, hey, I want to be president. No, you have to tell them exactly what it is that you plan to cover and how you plan to attack the issue. Some of the more common platforms or issues that we see on major platforms are education, social security, healthcare. These are the things that we see come up regularly, and our armed forces. How are we going to take care of the people that cannot take care of themselves? Or how are we going to protect those that cannot protect themselves? These are the major issues that we see recurring over and over and over again when we talk about different platforms. So, functions and purposes of the political parties continued into leadership. Leadership must work to pass laws that support the party's goals. They have to pass laws that will help them get to where they want to go. Imagine being at the beginning of the race and you're blindfolded and you have to just keep running that race and your objective is to win. You can't win because you can't see. They must pass laws or little mile markers along the way to help them support their party's goals, or to align the ideas or to align the law behind the processes that they're trying to implement or that they're trying to incorporate into our world as we know it. Functions and purposes of political parties. Watchdogs. What's a watchdog? Watchdogs monitor the actions of office holders to ensure that they are honest and working. Because just because someone has a public office doesn't mean that they're working. Similar to like when you're in a group project and maybe one person is doing all the work and someone's copying and maybe somebody kind of just got off task. Watchdogs ensure that they are honest and hardworking so that they are not stealing or misappropriating money, or that they are just being ethically moral, making sure that they are abiding by all of the rules that the government has set for a candidate. Citizens' help. Of course we need citizens' help because the citizens elect the candidates. With citizens' help, it is the responsibility to educate citizens about the issues. So when we talked about all those non-voters, it's technically the responsibilities of the parties to educate the citizens about the issues that are on their platform. So if you're a non-voter because you don't understand the issues or you don't know the issues, that may be a campaign strategy that could be corrected in order for it to move forward and in order for that campaign to be more successful. They must also offer opportunities for citizens to be involved in the political process, meaning that you either have polling locations or you have rallies or you have something that is inclusive so that the citizens can be included in the process. So let's talk about the political spectrum, right? We always hear, I'm either a far lefty or a far righty, or I am a conservative because I'm a righty, or I am a liberal because I am a lefty, or I don't really identify with either one of them, so I fall in the middle. So I'm a moderate, okay? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the political spectrum, where people fall based on what they believe and what they think as far as politics are concerned. Do you fall more on the liberal side, where you're more open to ideas that the Democratic Party has to give for you? Or are you more on the conservative side, where you're more open to the ideas of the Republican Party? It simply depends on your choice as to whether you identify as a liberal, whether you identify as a conservative, or if you like both concepts and you just kind of fall in the middle. That's okay too. So let's talk about those Democrats. Democrats are considered the liberals, and they're usually considered to be on the left. They support the government finance programs to help the poor, and they emphasize domestic programs for more expanded government. They're supported by the workers, laborers, and lower middle income levels, and they're represented by the color blue. When we talk about Democrats, oftentimes we associate Democrats with the working class, the people that work everyday jobs, just like me as a teacher or your parents that report to their jobs every single day. They're part of the working class that fuel the economy, and Democrats typically fall under the category of representing that particular class. Now, if you take a look at the next slide, it tells you a little bit about some of the presidents that have been over the United States. One of them is Franklin D. Roosevelt. Does anyone know why Franklin D. Roosevelt may have been featured? Or why Mr. William Clinton was featured? Well, these presidents were Democratic candidates, and they were also in favor of the social welfare of the people of the United States. Does that mean that there were Republican candidates that did not have the well-being of the United States? Absolutely not. It simply means that those were the examples that we pulled just to represent the Democratic Party. So let's talk about the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party, or the Republicans, are typically on the right side. They support individual initiative and economic growth to help the poor. So while they may not fund the programs, they try to give them tools in order to help them grow. When I was a kid, I used to hear the phrase, if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. But if you teach the man to fish, he will eat forever. That's kind of what I think about when I think about the Republican Party and their support for the individual initiative. Instead of giving the man the fish, they'll teach them how to fish. They emphasize foreign policy and a strong military. They have a less or limited government, gain support from big businesses and upper income levels. Whoop, whoop. So funding is usually through the roof. And they are represented by the color red. Their mascot is the elephant, and the Democratic mascot is the donkey. If you look at the next slide, we'll look at some of the more popular Republican presidents that we've had in our United States history. Moderate. Who is a moderate? A moderate is a person who avoids the extremes of either party. Remember, they kind of sit in the middle. They don't lean too far to the left and they don't lean too far to the right. They are right in the middle. When we talk about political parties, the American political system is dominated by Democrats and the Republicans, but there are third parties that play an important role as well, such as the Freedom Socialist Party, the American Party USA, the Independence Party, the Green Party or the Peace Party, the Independent American Party. These are some of the examples of some of the other parties that we have seen appear during the election process. So, what kind of voting system does the United States have? We pretty much have a two-party system. So, we have to talk about some of the similarities and some of the differences between the Republicans and the Democrats. So, number one, they both actually have liberal and conservative views. They both organize to win elections. They appeal to the political center and influence public policies. They reflect citizens' views. They want to associate with many people to get more votes. And oftentimes, we see that they both use the same strategies whenever they're campaigning or whenever they're marketing to the people that they would like to vote for their respective parties. So what are some of the differences? Some of the differences between Republican and Democratic parties are definitely going to be the platforms. Remember, the Democrats look to support the poor, whereas the Republicans look to give the poor tools in order to better themselves going forward. While they're both helping the poor, they're still slightly different. Doesn't seem like much, but it is. So, positions on major issues is what definitely sets the two parties apart. Third parties play a huge role in American politics because they're able to introduce new ideas, support a particular issue, and they typically revolve around a person. For example, Ross Perot or Ralph Nader are two of the more popular third party candidates that we've seen amongst the years. However, typically they introduce new ideas, but they rarely win elections because remember, we're two-party centered, so we're dominated by the Democrats and the Republicans. And they usually change the outcome on an election, even if they don't win. So when we look at third parties, we look at Ross Perot, who was part of the Reform Party. we're looking at Ralph Nader, which was part of the Green Party, and Teddy Roosevelt, which was part of the Progressive Party. And when we talk about these different parties and the different platforms and what they represent, we're looking at the things that make them unique or that make them different. Take a minute to go ahead and Google search the Reform Party. Take a minute to Google search the Green Party. And take a minute to Google search the Progressive Party. Don't worry, I'll wait. I know it feels like Jeopardy. Do, 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 do. Okay, no, I'm seriously going to leave you guys alone. Feel free to pause the video if you need to do a little bit of additional research on the Reform Party, the Green Party, and the Progressive Party. So next, we can't talk about voting without talking about the Electoral College. What is the Electoral College? Most adults don't know what the Electoral College is, what they're responsible for. Up until recent years, I don't think anyone really paid much attention to the Electoral College unless they were political scientists. However, the president and the vice president are elected by majority rule in the Electoral College. When we talk about the Electoral College, each state has the same number of electors as it does Congress members. How do we calculate this number? We take the number of senators plus the number of representatives, and that will equal the number of electoral votes in each state. When we look at the Electoral College, we have 538 total votes in the Electoral College, which is a lot more than the ones that we have at 435 in Congress and 100 Senate seats. So it is about 3 candidates more than the Congress and Senate, or both houses combined, the bicameral legislature combined. There are 270 electoral votes needed to win an election. For an example, during the Bush versus John Kerry election, Bush had 286 electoral votes, while John Kerry only had 252. Therefore, George W. Bush was able to win his election term. So the question is, if we're a democracy and we can vote for ourselves because that's what we do, then why do we need an electoral college, or why do we need electors? What made the framers of the Constitution create the system for the election of the president and the electoral college and the vice president? And it was simply to figure out how to balance power between the large and the small states. It was all about representation. As a result, electoral votes for each state are determined by the population within the state, similar to how we select our House of Representatives. The fear. What are the fears associated with the Electoral College? The issue for the framers were that people are not educated enough to make a good decision. When I was in college, I was always told, and I'll have to look up to see who exactly quoted this statement, and hopefully I'll have it by the next class period, but they said, do not leave the power of the people with the people, because the people are fickle. Fickle meaning that they change their mind easily. This is why they said that it was a fear that people are not educated enough to make the decision. It's not that they're not smart enough, but emotionally they may swing to the left or they may swing to the right based on their pure emotion, and not necessarily on the issue or the public policy that is at hand. As a result, electors who were educated about the process would make the official vote instead of the general public. So with that, we're going to freeze, because that was a whole lot of information for the first half of the electoral edition of the enrichment portion for American government. I hope to see you all tune in next class period or next enrichment period so that we can go through a recap and catch up where we left off. Have a great day, Uplift Education Scholars, and see you next time.